Hey, Facebook and everybody else. Just wanted to make a video for you about mentoring in research. I'm here on this castle in the town of Denia, Spain, and thought it would be a good time to just talk about what makes a good mentor and what makes mentoring often not work for people. I've seen a lot of people struggle with mentors in academia, in research, struggle finding a mentor that works for them. And I think one of the number one challenges really has to do with the type of mentoring that occurs and whether it is something that works for the person who's being mentored. So before I describe what the challenge is with this mentoring stuff, just a quick reminder, if you are looking for grant funding and want to optimize your process and get some free help with that, go over to grantwebinar.com and I have some free training for you there. And I think you're going to find that really useful and awesome. So back to the mentoring issue. I think one of the things that a lot of mentors do in academia, most people in academia are not actually, we don't receive training when we're getting PhDs or MDs in being a good mentor. It's just sort of a side thing that we do. It's like everybody says, oh, mentoring is important, but there's no real training in being a good mentor. And so what a lot of people by default do when they try to mentor somebody is they figure out what worked for them, and then they pass on exactly that and say, well, this way of doing things worked for me. Working really hard or doing this particular approach to grant writing or whatever. It worked for me, so you should do this. And then they'll often take it and say, well, but I made this mistake. I didn't work quite hard enough, or if I'd worked just a little bit harder, I would have been more successful. And so then they add that extra baggage on top of it and encourage their mentee to even work harder or be stronger or better or whatever than they were to sort of offset their mistakes. It's something that parents often do too. We want our kids to be so much better than we are, not acknowledging that our kids are humans too. And all humans make mistakes and have foibles. But the real challenge with this kind of mentoring is that it's a sort of one-size-fits-all thing. It says that this person I am mentoring is just like me, and the things that work for me would work exactly the same for this person I am mentoring in the same way. It doesn't acknowledge our unique individuality, who we are at our core, and what it is that works for one person. If we acknowledge this individuality, if we acknowledge this core, what works for one person does not necessarily work the same for another person. So for example, one thing in the mentoring and coaching that we do, we look at, is somebody predisposed, this is just one parameter, somebody predisposed to being consistent or variable. And it's true that some people have this strong predisposition between these two poles, between the consistency and the variability. And if you're somebody who's consistent, you like that regular schedule, you like doing things on a regular schedule. If you're variable, you like mixing it up. You don't like that consistent schedule. And when a highly variable person like me tries to fit into the mold of consistency, I try to, wake up the same time every day and do the same thing and be like in that consistent mold, I'm miserable. I'm damn miserable. And then whatever I do, I don't do as well because I'm miserable. Nobody does as well in their work, in their job, in their research if they're miserable than if they're in a better mood. So trying to fit myself into that mold doesn't work. So for example, if I had a mentor who was like, okay, in order to succeed, you've got to be on this particular schedule, you've got to have it all booked out and all scheduled and all planned, and come in to work at the same time every day and leave at the same time and so on. If they had said that, fortunately nobody in my mentoring did that, I would have really struggled and probably flunked out pretty quickly because that just wasn't me. So that's just one example. There are many other parameters we could look at that define us as unique individuals. And each one of those means that something that works for a mentor may not work for us. And so when I look at why so many people in academia struggle with the mentoring, struggling with getting really good mentoring, this is one of the biggest factors, is that the mentors do not take into account this kind of individuality between themselves and the mentee. and really taking into account what is this mentee really like, what are their internal goals, what are they striving for, what are they working towards, and not just trying to foist upon them everything that we think is right because it worked for us. So it's really important when you're looking for a mentor of any kind, whether it's somebody internally in your research institution or whether it's somebody external who perhaps has more time and more practice in mentoring. Regardless, it's a really good thing to find somebody who is looking at your individuality, trying to figure out who you are and trying to mentor you according to that, not in a one-size-fits-all mold. Pretty important stuff. And again, if you want some help with your grant writing, free help, awesome free training, go over to grantwebinar.com and check that out. So there are some other parameters about mentoring that really differentiate between good or useful mentoring, I should say. I don't like the words good and bad because they're very judgy, but useful versus not as useful. Another thing is just simply time availability and focus. A lot of, unfortunately, academic mentors are so busy, they really don't have the time and the focus to spend on reviewing your proposals or doing other things, giving you feedback to really help you in your career. A lot of people are struggling themselves with their funding and with their time, just for lack of time. And so they don't have the resources available to do a great job with that. And I think this is why there's been this big trend towards hiring more sort of commercial coaches or commercial mentors, people who do this as a full-time thing rather than just the sort of people who are adding it on to an already overstacked schedule. So that's another thing I would encourage you to consider, although you may find somebody locally who has the time and the dedication and the expertise to do that. And if so, that's awesome. But thanks for watching, and I hope you found this useful. Please leave a comment and do a social share. Share this with your friends, your colleagues. It's awesome to get the message out about things like this to help out the colleagues and make academia and research overall a better place to be. So until next time, this is Dr. Morgan Giddings. See you.